For more, here in studio is author and activist David Swanson. David, thanks for joining us. So now, we just saw the latest there, a reporter covering over the weekend. You've been camped out here in D.C., and, we've been seeing these images over the past few weeks. We're entering our month anniversary almost. And so the question now is, what comes next?
Well, we're not going anywhere. We're staying. And we got here to Washington on October 6th, and Congress left town, and they get back on Tuesday. And so Tuesday morning is when we really begin to bring our grievances to our government on Capitol Hill. I mean, we have lots of other targets in this town, buildings that we have been and will continue to be shutting down. But our government hasn't even been here, and most of the bureaucrats and the lobbyists and the profiteers have been gone for the weekend and Columbus Day. So we're just getting ready to get started, and we have no intention of going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, and as they become to filter back into Washington, how do you think that's going to affect the movement? Like, do you think they'll listen to you more, or I mean, how are you expecting that to change?
I'm not expecting them to shut down all foreign bases and end all wars and redirect money to human needs by next week. This is going to be a long process of shifting our culture, of educating each other, of coming to realize our strength in numbers. But we're beginning to see it. We're beginning to see conversations. I mean, a peace and justice activist like me outside of a party or a campaign getting invited on network television and cable television, this is new and different. The conversation about what the 1% of us is doing to the rest of us. Senator Sanders getting Ben Bernanke to admit that Wall Street ruined our economy. California pulling out of the mortgage fraud settlement. We're starting to see little ripples, but it's going to be a lengthy process. But I'm more encouraged than I've been in 10 years.
Okay, so, I mean, do you think that this movement has reached its peak? Or is there do you have a fear that this may fizzle out and, the next big story is going to come along?
I doubt it very much. I don't think we're completely dependent on the U.S. corporate media. And when we march through the streets of this city, and I've heard stories from other cities, people join in the march. We shout, "We're the 99%, and so are you," and they cheer and they join in and we applaud them. People honk their horns not in anger at the traffic jam, but in solidarity. Cabbies show up at Freedom Plaza and say, "Are you one of the protesters?" No charge. Stores are donating things. We're beginning to realize that it's not our personal problems in our household, but that everybody shares these problems.
And, weeks later, this was a criticism in the media that there is no leader. We still haven't seen this leader emerge. And do you think that, that this protest is able to stay strong without this kind of charismatic leader emerging and inspiring people to persist and to advance their interests?
When CNN demands our leader, I'm reminded of the U.S. Army demanding a chief from American Indians who didn't have one. We don't need that. We don't need that imposed on us. We're working to avoid having a leader. People who saw a politician like Barack Obama as a leader are very disillusioned right now, and that's good. They've got that right. We don't need a leader. We need an agenda, and we have it. Tax the rich and end the wars and empower the majority rather than the corporate elite. It's quite simple. It's anyone other than perhaps a CNN producer can grasp it.
Right, and it's obvious what the message is and what these people are upset about. But in terms of demands, can you narrow it down to three things to quantify it or to make it so we could steer? There's a basis for a change in policy to see some real change.
If you go to and by the way, we have thousands of charismatic leaders, but if you go to the top of October2011.org, you'll see 7 short bullet points, including ending the wars, cutting the military spending, taxing the rich, getting clean elections, taking the money out, etc. You read all of that, it's 1,000 times shorter than the instruction manual for a DVD player or a television. It's completely within the cognitive ability of Americans. If Thomas Jefferson had to fit the Declaration of Independence on a bumper sticker, it wouldn't have made it better. It would have made it stupid, and the fact that the sound bites have shrunk over the years doesn't mean that our demands have shrunk, right? I mean, you can put it in 2 words, majority rule, but there are a lot of things that the majority wants that aren't happening in Washington.
We saw these protests, anti-war protests, some similar messages in the 60s during the civil rights movement, and some of them turned violent, which, we never want to encourage violence. But do you think that there needs to be something else, like some kind of another push, something else to really help this movement take off?
We need to use the very strongest tool we have, because this is a crisis, and that tool is nonviolence. Nonviolence is much more powerful than violence. The two guys who tried to mess up our march to the Air and Space Museum the other day using violence displayed its weakness. Violence succeeds around the world less than half as frequently as nonviolence. Nonviolence is just much, much more powerful. It brings more people into our movement. It frightens the elite much more severely, and it is much more likely to achieve success. We just need much more of it.
Much more. And are you expecting, with movements, the Tea Party movement, for example, where you saw thousands and thousands of people show up? I mean, how can you get more people? Because you're saying that you're, the 99%. How do you get the crowds to reflect that number, where we're seeing even more people to put even more pressure on government leaders?
Well, some of us have been trying to get this started for many years without this much success. Like, we have more people now. We have more young people, more people from different backgrounds now, and much more public awareness of solidarity with the movement now than we've seen in the past 10 years. That has to grow dramatically. But this is an incredibly good start that I think needs to be continued in more or less the same direction it's going.
David, thank you so much for keeping us informed on the latest on the protest. That was author and activist